On Father's Day, my daughter gave her father-in-law a $30,000 trip and toasted, "To my real dad, I received a $3 lottery ticket." The next day, I won $170 million. What I did next made her beg for forgiveness. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this and comment the city you're watching from. I'm Anthony, and I'm 63 years old. I never thought a Father's Day could destroy a man the way this one destroyed me. I pulled into Bella's driveway that Sunday morning, the same way I had for the past 8 years since she married Derek. The house was impressive, I'll give her that. A 2-story colonial with perfectly manicured lawns that screamed success. Derek's success, not mine. I'd spent my whole life working construction, and every callus on these hands had been earned to give Bella a better life than I'd had. I sat in my old truck for a moment, looking at the pristine facade. Something felt different today, though I couldn't put my finger on what. Maybe it was the way Bella's voice had sounded on the phone when she invited me. Distant, formal, like she was checking off a box on her to-do list. I grabbed the small gift bag from my passenger seat. Inside was a picture frame I'd made in my workshop, carved from oak, with a photo of Bella and me from her college graduation. It wasn't expensive, but it was made with love. That had to count for something, right? Derek answered the door before I could knock. He was one of those men who wore polo shirts like armor, always perfectly pressed, always making sure you knew he belonged to the country club. He gave me that smile he reserved for people he considered beneath him. "Anthony, good to see you," he said, though his handshake was limp and his eyes were already looking past me. "Come on in. Everyone's here." Everyone. That's when I should have known. I walked into their spacious living room, and there he was, Derek's father, Richard, holding court like some kind of king. He was surrounded by Derek's siblings and their kids, all of them laughing at something he'd said. Richard had always been everything I wasn't. Retired corporate executive, traveled the world, spoke 3 languages. The kind of grandfather who took his grandkids to Europe for summer vacation while I took mine fishing at the local lake. Bella came rushing over, and for a moment my heart lifted. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was something in her eyes, an excitement that made my stomach twist. "Dad, you're here," she said, giving me a quick hug that felt more like a duty than affection. Perfect timing. We were just about to do the gift exchange. Gift exchange? This was new. In all the years I'd been coming to these Father's Day gatherings, it had always been a simple lunch, nothing fancy. But today felt orchestrated, like a performance I hadn't been given the script for. Derek's mother, Patricia, gestured toward the coffee table, where several elegantly wrapped packages sat arranged like centerpieces. My small gift bag looked pathetic next to them. "Anthony, please sit anywhere you'd like," Patricia said with that polite voice rich people use when they're being charitable. I found a spot on the edge of the group, close enough to participate but far enough away to feel like an outsider. Bella clapped her hands together, drawing everyone's attention. "Okay, everyone, before we eat, Derek and I have some special gifts we want to give to our dads." My heart started beating faster. This was it. Maybe Bella had planned something special for me after all. Maybe I'd been wrong about the distance I'd been feeling. She reached for one of the large packages first. "Richard, this is for you." Derek's father opened it with the careful precision of someone used to receiving expensive gifts. Inside was a leather portfolio, and when he opened it, his face lit up. "A 2-week Mediterranean cruise," Bella announced to the room. "First-class accommodations, shore excursions, everything included. You've always talked about wanting to see Greece and Italy." The room erupted in congratulations. Richard stood up and hugged Bella tight, spinning her around like she was still a little girl. "Sweetheart, this is incredible. This must have cost a fortune." "30,000, Derek said proudly, as if the number itself was an achievement. "But you're worth every penny, Dad." I felt my chest tighten. $30,000. That was more than I made in half a year before I retired. I watched as Richard continued to gush over the gift as everyone gathered around to look at the cruise brochures and itinerary. Then Bella turned to me. "And Dad," she said, reaching into her purse and pulling out something small. "This is for you." She handed me a lottery ticket. A single $3 scratch-off ticket from the gas station. The kind you buy when you have extra change and nowhere else to put it. I stared at it in my hands, feeling the weight of the room's attention. Everyone had gone quiet. Patricia cleared her throat uncomfortably. One of Derek's siblings whispered something to their spouse. "It's a winner," Bella said quickly, as if that somehow made it better. "I mean, it could be. You always said you never bought lottery tickets, so I thought you might like to try." I looked up at her, searching her face for some sign that this was a joke, that the real gift was coming. But her expression was earnest, almost defensive, like she genuinely thought this was appropriate. "Go ahead and scratch it off," Derek said with a laugh that didn't quite hide his discomfort. "Maybe you'll get lucky." That's when Richard stood up, raising his wine glass high. The room turned toward him expectantly. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding attention, "to Bella and Derek for their incredible generosity, and to all the fathers here today." He paused, looking directly at Bella with unmistakable affection. "But especially to my daughter-in-law, who has shown me what it means to have a child who truly appreciates everything you've done for them. Bella, you've made me feel like the luckiest father in the world. To my real daughter and my true family." Then Bella raised her glass, her face glowing with pride. "To my real father," she said, looking straight at Richard. "The man who taught me what success looks like and showed me how to dream bigger than I ever thought possible." The words hit me like a physical blow. Real father. My hand started shaking, and I had to set down the lottery ticket to keep from dropping it. I sat there surrounded by the laughter and congratulations, feeling more alone than I had since Margaret died. This was my daughter, the little girl I'd raised by myself after losing my wife when Bella was only 12. The child I'd worked double shifts to put through college, the woman I'd walked down the aisle just 8 years ago, and to her, I wasn't her real father. I was just the man who happened to be there. I looked down at the $3 lottery ticket in my lap, then at the $30,000 cruise itinerary being passed around the room like a trophy. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd written it in neon lights. I stood up quietly, tucked the lottery ticket into my pocket, and walked toward the door. Nobody noticed. They were all too busy celebrating Richard's good fortune and Bella's generous heart. I drove home in silence, that lottery ticket burning a hole in my pocket like evidence of my own worthlessness. The house felt different when I walked through the front door that evening. Not physically different, but heavier somehow, like the air itself had thickened with my loneliness. I set my keys on the kitchen counter next to Margaret's old coffee mug, the one I could never bring myself to put away, and pulled that damn lottery ticket out of my pocket. $3. That's what 37 years of fatherhood was worth to my daughter. I sat down at the kitchen table where I'd helped Bella with homework for years, where we'd eaten countless dinners together after Margaret died, where I'd taught her to balance a checkbook because I wanted her to be smarter with money than I'd ever been. The lottery ticket lay there between my hands like an accusation. I couldn't stop hearing Richard's toast. My real daughter. Those words kept echoing in my head, bouncing around like they were looking for a place to settle and cause maximum damage. How long had Bella felt that way? How long had I been nothing more than a placeholder in her life, keeping the seat warm until someone better came along? The memories started flooding back without permission. Bella, at 6 years old, crying in my arms after her mother's funeral, making me promise I'd never leave her, too. Me working 16-hour days at the construction site to pay for her dance classes, her piano lessons, her college prep courses. Selling the house Margaret and I had dreamed of retiring in so I could afford Bella's tuition at that fancy private university she'd set her heart on. I remembered the night before her wedding when she'd asked me to walk her down the aisle. She'd been nervous, fidgeting with her engagement ring. And she'd said, "Dad, what if I'm not ready for this?" I'd told her that being scared was normal, that marriage was a leap of faith, but that Derek seemed like a good man who'd take care of her. What I didn't tell her was that I was scared too, scared of losing the only family I had left. Turns out I was right to be scared. I just hadn't realized I'd already lost her. I got up and walked to the mantelpiece where I kept our family photos. There was Bella's graduation picture, the the one where she'd insisted I stand beside her, even though I felt out of place among all those other families with their expensive clothes and confident smiles. There was a photo from her wedding day, me in my best suit that I'd bought specifically for the occasion, trying to look like I belonged in Derek's family's world. But the photo that stopped me cold was one from Bella's 16th birthday. Margaret had been gone for 4 years by then, and I'd been struggling to figure out how to be both mother and father to a teenage girl. Bella had wanted a big party, the kind with catered food and a DJ, but I was working overtime just to keep up with the mortgage, so instead, I'd made her a cake from scratch, decorated the living room with streamers from the dollar store, and invited her 3 closest friends over for pizza and movies. In the photo, Bella was blowing out the candles, and she was genuinely smiling. Not the polite smile she gave me now, but a real, happy smile. I was standing behind her, my hands on her shoulders, and I looked proud and hopeful, like I actually believed I was doing a good job. When had that changed? When did I become the embarrassment she had to tolerate instead of the father she was happy to see? I thought about the way she'd introduced Derek's family to me at the engagement party. "This is my dad, Anthony. He works in construction." Not, "This is my dad who raised me by himself after my mom died." Not, "This is my dad who sacrificed everything to give me opportunities he never had." Just, "He works in construction." Like that was all there was to know about me. And maybe that's all there was, from her perspective. Maybe I'd been fooling myself all these years thinking that love and sacrifice were enough. Maybe Richard was right to be her real father, because he could give her things I never could. European vacations, connections, a social status that opened doors. I walked to my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept important papers. Buried underneath my insurance documents and tax returns was a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside were all the letters Bella had written me during her college years. I'd saved every single one, even the short ones where she was just asking for money. I pulled out one from her junior year and read it by the light of my bedside lamp. "Dad, thank you so much for the extra money for my sorority dues. I know it's a lot, but it means everything to me to be part of this group. The connections I'm making here are going to help me after graduation. Derek's in the best fraternity on campus, and I think things are getting serious between us. His family has a house in the Hamptons, and they've invited me for the summer. Can you believe it? Me in the Hamptons. I promise I'll make you proud, Dad. All your hard work is paying off. Love, Bella." I'd been so happy when I read that letter the first time. She was achieving things I'd never even dreamed of. She was moving in circles I could never access. I thought I was giving her a better life, but reading it now, I could see what I'd missed. She wasn't sharing her excitement with me because she wanted me to be part of it. She was sharing it because she needed me to understand why it was worth spending my money on. Even then, I was just the bank account that made her real life possible. I put the letter back and closed the drawer. The house was so quiet I could hear the old refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the same sound that used to comfort me when Margaret was alive, because it meant we had a home together. Now it just sounded empty. My phone sat on the nightstand, and for a moment I considered calling Bella. Maybe I could explain how her gift had made me feel. Maybe we could talk through this misunderstanding. But what would I say? That I was hurt she'd spent $30,000 on Derek's father and $3 on me. That would just make me sound petty and jealous. And the truth was, it wasn't really about the money, it was about what the money represented. Richard got the Mediterranean cruise because he was worth celebrating. I got the lottery ticket because I was worth an afterthought. I lay down on my bed, still fully clothed, staring at the ceiling where a water stain had been growing slowly for the past 2 years. I kept meaning to fix it, but somehow I never got around to it, just like I'd never gotten around to a lot of things since Margaret died. The house was full of small repairs I'd been putting off, projects I'd started and never finished. Maybe that's what I'd become to Bella, one of those unfinished projects, something she'd inherited from her mother's death that she didn't quite know what to do with but couldn't bring herself to throw away entirely. The lottery ticket was still in my pocket, and I could feel it every time I shifted position. $3, In a few hours, it would be Monday, and I'd go back to my quiet routine. Coffee at 6, breakfast alone, maybe some work in the garage on the furniture pieces I'd been making to keep my hands busy. The lottery ticket would probably end up in the trash, worthless, just like everything else I'd been given lately. But lying there in the dark, listening to that empty house settle around me, I made a decision. I was going to scratch off that ticket. Not because I thought I'd win anything, but because I wanted to see how this joke would end. $3 seemed like the perfect metaphor for my relationship with my daughter. Small, cheap, and ultimately disappointing. Tomorrow, I'd find out just how worthless I really was. Monday morning came the way Monday mornings always did in my house. Too quiet, too empty, and with nothing but another day of pretending I had purpose stretching ahead of me. I'd slept maybe 3 hours, tossing and turning with Richard's words playing on repeat in my head. My real daughter. The phrase had carved itself into my brain like graffiti on a wall. I made coffee in Margaret's old percolator, the one she'd insisted on keeping even after I offered to buy her one of those fancy electric machines. "Coffee tastes better when you have to work for it," she used to say. Everything tasted like cardboard to me now. But I went through the motions anyway, because routines were all I had left. The lottery ticket sat on the kitchen counter where I had left it the night before, looking as pathetic in the morning light as it had felt in Bella's living room. $3. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands, feeling the cheap cardboard backing, reading the fine print that promised instant cash, prizes up to $200,000. Right, like they were just giving that money away to every construction worker with a broken heart. But I'd made myself a promise in the dark hours of the night. I was going to scratch this thing off, see how this cosmic joke played out. Maybe I'd win $5 and buy myself a beer. Maybe I'd win nothing and have the perfect symbol for what my relationship with Bella had become. I found a quarter in the junk drawer and sat back down at the kitchen table. The ticket was called Lucky Break, which seemed like the universe's idea of irony. When was the last time I'd gotten a lucky break? When Margaret said yes to marrying me 38 years ago? When Bella was born healthy? Those felt like borrowed luck now, happiness I'd had to pay back with interest. I started scratching off the silver coating, working methodically from left to right. The first number revealed was 7, then 14, then 22. Nothing special, just random numbers that would probably match nothing. I moved to the Your Numbers section and started uncovering those. 7 came up first. My heart did a little skip, but I told myself not to get excited. Matching one number probably won me my $3 back. Then 14 appeared. I sat up straighter, suddenly paying attention in a way I hadn't expected. 2 matching numbers. That might actually win me something real, maybe $20, maybe $50. But when I scratched off the third number and saw 22 staring back at me, my hand started shaking. I looked back at the winning number combinations printed at the top of the ticket. Match 3 numbers, win the jackpot. I read it again to make sure I wasn't imagining things. 3 numbers. I had 3 numbers, 7, 14, 22. The jackpot amount was printed in bold red numbers at the bottom of the ticket, $170,000. $170 million. I set the quarter down carefully, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Then I read the numbers again, and again. And one more time because surely I was misreading something. But there they were, clear as day. 3 matching numbers, the jackpot prize, and a validation code at the bottom that I'd need to claim the winnings. I sat there staring at that ticket for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. $170 million. More money than I'd ever even imagined existing in one place. More money than Derek's family had. More money than anyone I'd ever known had. The irony was so sharp, it almost cut me. Bella's throwaway gift, her $3 afterthought, had just made me richer than everyone who'd been in that room yesterday combined, including Richard with his corporate pension and his Mediterranean cruise, including Derek with his country club membership and his imported cars. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my small backyard where I'd installed a swing set for Bella 20 years ago. The rusty chains were still hanging there, though the wooden seat had rotted away years back. I'd been meaning to take it down, but somehow I never got around to it. Now it looked like evidence of a different life, when I'd believed that being a good father meant building things that would last. My first instinct was to call Bella, to share this incredible news with the only family I had left. But then I remembered the way she'd looked at me yesterday, the casual dismissal in her voice when she'd handed me this ticket. "You always said you never bought lottery tickets," like she knew me so little that she thought a gambling ticket was an appropriate gift for a man who'd spent his whole life working for everything he had. What would she say if I called her right now? Would she be happy for me, or would she immediately start calculating what this meant for her? I thought about the way her eyes had lit up when she'd talked about Richard's cruise, how proud she'd been to spend $30,000 on someone else's father. I folded the ticket carefully and put it in my wallet. Then I made another pot of coffee and sat back down at the kitchen table to think. This money could change everything. I could buy a house in one of those neighborhoods where Derek's family lived. I could travel the world, eat at expensive restaurants, wear clothes that didn't come from the discount store. I could become the kind of man that Bella might actually be proud to call her father. But did I want that? Did I want to buy my daughter's respect with lottery winnings? I thought about Margaret, about what she would have said if she'd been here. She never cared about money beyond having enough to get by. "Rich or poor, you're still the same person on the inside," she used to tell me when I'd complain about not being able to afford the things other families had. And if someone only loves you for what you can give them, they don't really love you at all. Margaret had been wise in ways I was only beginning to understand. I pulled out my phone and Googled what to do when you win the lottery. The advice was overwhelming. Hire a lawyer. Hire a financial advisor. Don't tell anyone until you've claimed the prize. Don't make any major decisions for at least 6 months. Keep your ticket in a safe place and make copies. That last part made me nervous. What if I lost this ticket? What if the house burned down? What if someone stole it? I'd gone from having nothing to lose to having everything to lose in the span of 10 minutes. I drove to the bank and put the original ticket in my safety deposit box, but not before making 3 copies on the photocopier in the lobby. Then I came home and did something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick to the part-time maintenance job I'd been working since I retired. Not because I was sick, but because I needed time to think. Sitting in my living room, surrounded by the modest furniture I'd accumulated over a lifetime of careful spending, I tried to imagine what $170 million would actually mean. I could buy anything, go anywhere, do anything. But the thing I wanted most, I realized, was something money couldn't purchase. I wanted my daughter to love me for who I was, not what I could provide. I wanted to matter to her the way Richard mattered to her, not because of what I could give her, but because of who I was to her. The ticket had given me power I'd never had before, but it had also given me clarity. For the first time since Margaret died, I wasn't going to be the one chasing after someone else's approval. I wasn't going to be the one making sacrifices to prove my worth. I had choices now, real choices, and I was going to make them carefully. I thought about Bella probably going about her Monday routine without giving yesterday's humiliation a second thought. She had no idea that her $3 insult had just changed everything. But she would find out soon enough. And when she did, I'd finally get to see who my daughter really was when she wanted something from me. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and saw Bella's name. For a split second, my heart jumped. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd realized how hurtful yesterday had been. I let it go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say, it could wait. I had plans to make. 3 days passed before Bella found out. 3 peaceful days where I didn't answer her calls, didn't respond to her texts, asking if I was okay after Father's Day. I spent those days researching lawyers, meeting with financial advisors, and doing something I hadn't done in decades, putting myself first. I should have known the quiet wouldn't last. It was Thursday morning when my phone started ringing nonstop. Not Bella's number this time, but numbers I didn't recognize. Then my landline started going off. Then someone knocked on my front door so aggressively I thought they might break it down. I looked through the peephole, and saw a young woman with a microphone flanked by a man with a camera. Behind them, a news van was parked in my driveway. My stomach dropped. Somehow, they'd found out. I didn't answer the door, but I could hear the reporter talking to the camera outside. We're here at the home of Anthony Morrison, the 63-year-old construction worker who just became the sole winner of last week's $170 million lottery jackpot. Mr. Morrison has yet to make any public statements about his windfall, but neighbors describe him as a quiet, hard-working man who's lived in this modest home for over 20 years. I closed the blinds and moved away from the window, but I could still hear her continuing. According to lottery officials, Mr. Morrison purchased his winning ticket at a local gas station. He's the largest single lottery winner in the state's history. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Morrison, this is Janet Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd love to speak with you about your lottery win. Please call me at... I deleted it without reading the rest. Then another text came in, this one from Bella. Dad, I just saw the news. Call me immediately. I stared at that message for a long time. Not congratulations, Dad. Not I'm so happy for you. Just call me immediately. Like I was a child who'd done something wrong and needed to explain myself. Before I could decide whether to respond, my phone rang again. Bella's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again and again. By the fifth call, I was curious enough to listen to the voicemails. The first one, Dad, what the hell is going on? Why didn't you tell me about this? Call me back right now. The second one, Dad, I'm serious. This is insane. $170 million? From the lottery ticket I gave you? Call me. The third one, Dad, I know you're there. Pick up the phone. We need to talk about this. This changes everything. The fourth one, Dad, I'm driving over there right now. You better be home. The fifth one, Dad, there are reporters at your house and mine. This is crazy. Please call me back. I set the phone down and made myself a sandwich, listening to the reporters outside my front door. They were persistent, I'd give them that. But I'd dealt with pushier people than journalists. I could wait them out. What I couldn't avoid was Bella. She showed up around noon, pushing past the reporters with the kind of determination I remembered from when she was a toddler and wanted something. She pounded on my door like she was trying to break it down. Dad, open this door right now. I know you're in there. I sighed and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I could see her face was flushed, her hair disheveled like she'd been running her hands through it. Behind her, the reporters were filming everything. Dad, please, she said, her voice cracking. Just let me in. We need to talk. I opened the door just enough for her to slip inside, then quickly closed it behind her. The sudden quiet felt strange after all the commotion outside. Bella stood in my entryway, breathing hard, looking around the house like she'd never seen it before, which, in a way, she probably hadn't. When was the last time she'd really looked at this place? When was the last time she'd paid attention to anything about my life? Dad, she said, and her voice was different now, softer, more like the voice she'd used when she was little and wanted something from me. Is it true? Did you really win $170 million? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in years. She was 35 years old, successful in her own right, married to a man with money and connections. She had everything she'd ever wanted, so why did she look so desperate? Why didn't you tell me, she continued when I didn't answer immediately. I gave you that ticket. I gave it to you. Do you realize what this means? And there it was, the thing I'd been waiting to hear. What does it mean, Bella? I asked quietly. She stared at me like I was being deliberately obtuse. It means everything's different now. It means we're rich. It means we can do anything we want. We. Interesting how quickly that had become a we situation. I thought I was just the man who works in construction, I said. I thought Richard was your real father. Bella's face went pale. Dad, that was just... I didn't mean it like that. You know I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? She was quiet for a moment, looking around the living room like she was searching for the right words in the furniture. I was just caught up in the moment. Richard does so much for Derek's family, and I wanted to acknowledge that. It didn't mean anything about you, didn't it? No. The word came out sharper than she'd probably intended. Dad, you're my father. You raised me. You sacrificed everything for me. I know that. Do you? Of course I do. But she wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it. Then why the lottery ticket, Bella? Why $3 for me and $30,000 for Richard? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see her trying to think of an explanation that would make sense, that would somehow justify the disparity. It wasn't about the money, she said finally. I knew you didn't like extravagant gifts. You always said you didn't need anything fancy. So you thought I needed gambling? It wasn't gambling. It was supposed to be fun. A little surprise. A surprise. I nodded slowly, like I'm some simple man who'd be entertained by a scratch-off ticket. That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Bella? Because from where I was sitting, it felt like you were giving me a joke gift, while you gave someone you actually respected something real. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face in a way that would have broken my heart just a week ago. Dad, please. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I never meant to do that. You have to believe me. I want to believe you, I said, but your track record isn't great. What do you mean? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you asked about my life without needing something? When was the last time you introduced me to someone without apologizing for what I do for a living? She didn't have an answer for that. Dad, I know I haven't been the best daughter, she said, her voice small, but this is our chance to start over. With this money, we can be a real family again. Our chance. Real family. The words kept coming, but I noticed she still hadn't asked how I was feeling about winning. She hadn't asked what I planned to do with the money. She hadn't asked anything about me at all. What kind of real family do you want us to be, Bella? Her eyes lit up, like I'd just asked her to describe her favorite vacation. We could travel together. We could buy a house somewhere beautiful. We could do all the things we never got to do when I was growing up. And what about Derek? What about his family? They'd be part of it too, of course. We're all family now. I almost laughed. Derek's family, who had barely acknowledged my existence for 8 years, would suddenly want to be part of my life now that I had money. Richard, who had been her real father just 4 days ago, would have to share that title now that I could afford better gifts than lottery tickets. I need some time to think about all this, I said. Time to think about what? Dad, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. We could do anything. I know. That's why I need to think. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. What's there to think about? We're rich. We won. You keep saying we, Bella. But I'm the one who won. Me, the man who works in construction. The man who got a $3 lottery ticket for Father's Day. Her face went red. Are you saying you're not going to share it with me? And there it was, the real question. Not, are you happy? Or, how are you handling this news? But, are you going to share it with me? I looked at my daughter, this woman I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, and realized I didn't know her at all. Or maybe I did know her, and I'd just been lying to myself about who she was. I'm saying I need time to think, I repeated. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to handle this unexpected resistance. Fine, she said finally. Take your time. But Dad, remember that family is everything, and I'm your family. After she left, my phone showed 28 missed calls from her number. I turned it off and sat in the quiet of my house, holding the weight of my new reality. Money changes everything, they say. But what I was learning was that it doesn't change people. It just reveals who they really were all along. 2 weeks passed before Bella stopped calling every day. 2 weeks of voicemails that grew progressively more frantic, more manipulative, more desperate. I listened to every single one, but I didn't respond. I was learning something about my daughter that I probably should have figured out years ago. The messages started out apologetic. Dad, I know I hurt your feelings on Father's Day. I was thoughtless, and I'm sorry. Can we please talk? Then they became pleading. Dad, please don't shut me out. You're all the family I have left. Then angry. Dad, this is ridiculous. You can't ignore me forever. Then strategic. Dad, I told Derek's family about your win, and Richard wants to apologize personally for any misunderstanding. By the end of the second week, they'd become threats disguised as concern. Dad, people are talking. They're saying you've changed. that the money has made you cold. Is that who you want to be? I'd been using those 2 weeks wisely. I'd met with lawyers, set up trusts, made arrangements that Bella knew nothing about. I'd also been doing something else that would have surprised her. I'd been watching. I drove past her house a few times, never stopping, just observing. I saw Derek's BMW being repossessed one Tuesday morning. I saw them having what looked like a heated argument in their driveway the following Thursday. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Derek had lost his job 3 months ago, something they'd been hiding from everyone, including me. Suddenly, the $30,000 gift to Richard made more sense. It wasn't generosity. It was desperation. They'd been trying to solidify their position in his family because their own financial foundation was crumbling. The lottery ticket hadn't been a thoughtless gift. It had been the only gift they could afford. That realization should have made me feel sorry for Bella. Instead, it made me angry. Not because they were struggling, but because even when they were, she'd still found a way to make me feel small. On a Wednesday morning in early July, I finally decided it was time to see my daughter again, but this time it would be on my terms. I called her from a new phone number I'd gotten specifically for this purpose. She answered on the first ring. Hello? Her voice was breathless, hopeful. It's your father, Bella. Dad. Oh my God, Dad. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I was starting to think something had happened to you. I've been busy. Busy with what? Dad, we need to talk. There are so many things we need to figure out with the money, and I've had some ideas. Meet me at Denny's on 5th Street in an hour, I interrupted. Come alone. Alone? Dad, why can't you just come to the house? Or I could come to you. Because I said Denny's. 1 hour, come alone or don't come at all. I hung up before she could respond. Denny's was perfect for what I had in mind. Public enough that she couldn't make a scene, but not nice enough for her to feel comfortable. I wanted her off balance for this conversation. I arrived first and chose a booth in the back where we could have privacy. I ordered coffee and waited. She was 15 minutes late, which was typical for Bella. Punctuality had never been her strong suit, especially when it came to appointments with me. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked exhausted, older somehow. Her clothes were still expensive, but they hung on her differently, like she'd lost weight from stress. Her face lit up when she saw me, but there was something desperate in her smile. Dad, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. You look good, different, but good. I did look different. I'd been eating better, sleeping better, exercising more. Having choices tends to agree with a man. How are you, Bella? I'm fine. Great, actually. Really good. She was talking too fast, the way she used to when she was lying about homework or curfew. Dad, I'm so glad you called. I've been thinking about everything you said, and you're right. I haven't been the daughter I should have been. I sipped my coffee and waited for her to continue. I've been selfish, she went on. I got caught up in Derek's world and trying to fit in with his family, and I lost sight of what really matters. You. You're what matters. Am I? Of course you are. Dad, you're my father. Nothing will ever change that. Even when I'm just a construction worker with nothing to offer, she flinched. Dad, I never said you had nothing to offer. Oh, Chet, didn't you? When you introduced me to Derek's colleagues, when you seated me at the kids' table at your wedding reception, when you gave Richard $30,000 and me $3? That's not fair. You're taking things out of context. Then give me the context, Bella. Explain to me how any of that was about love and not about shame. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. I was protecting you. From what? From them, from their judgment. Dad, Derek's family, they're not like us. They're snobs. They judge people by their money and their status. I thought if I kept you separate from that world, you wouldn't have to deal with their condescension. So instead, you dealt it out yourself. That's not what I was doing, wasn't it? You were embarrassed by me, Bella. Just say it. She started crying then. Real tears this time. Yes, she whispered. Sometimes I was embarrassed. Not by you, but by the situation. I wanted to fit in so badly, and I thought if they saw you as different from them, they'd see me as different too. Finally, the truth. Thank you for being honest, I said. But Dad, that's all changed now. With the money, everything's different. You can be whoever you want to be. We can travel, we can join country clubs, we can buy our way into respectability? That's not what I meant. Isn't it? You're still embarrassed by who I am, Bella. Now you just think money can fix it. Dad, please. I'm trying to apologize here. I'm trying to make things right. Why now? Why are you suddenly interested in making things right? She looked at me like I was being cruel for even asking. Because you're my father, and I love you. And the $170 million has nothing to do with it? Of course it doesn't. Really? So if I told you I'd given it all away, you'd still be here wanting to reconcile? Her face went white. You wouldn't. And there it was, the moment of truth. Even the possibility that the money might be gone was enough to panic her. I haven't given it away, I said quietly, but your reaction tells me everything I need to know. Dad, that's not fair. Anyone would be shocked by that news. It doesn't mean I don't love you for who you are. And when was the last time you loved me for who I was, Bella? Really loved me, not just tolerated me or felt obligated to me. She couldn't answer that question. We both knew why. I want to make this right, she said finally. Tell me how to make this right. I finished my coffee and set the cup down carefully. You can't make it right, Bella. Some things can't be fixed with apologies or good intentions or even money. Dad, please don't say that. I'm not saying it to hurt you. I'm saying it because it's true. You made choices about who I was to you long before that lottery ticket. The money didn't change anything. It just made everything clearer. I stood up and put $20 on the table, more than enough to cover 2 cups of coffee. Where are you going? Home, to pack. Pack? Dad, what are you talking about? I'm leaving, Bella. I'm starting over somewhere else. You can't just leave. This is your home. I'm your family. One more. I looked down at her, this woman I'd raised and loved and sacrificed for, and felt nothing but sadness. Not anger anymore, just a deep, tired sadness for all the years we'd both wasted pretending we had something we didn't. Take care of yourself, Bella, and maybe think about who you want to be when nobody's watching. I walked out of that Denny's and drove home, leaving her sitting there with tears streaming down her face and 28 unanswered calls still on her phone. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally moving in the right direction. 6 months later, I was sitting on the deck of my new house in Charleston, South Carolina, watching the sun set over the harbor. The house wasn't a mansion. It wasn't the kind of place that screamed lottery winner. It was just a comfortable 3-bedroom cottage with a view of the water and enough space for a man to breathe without feeling crowded by his own regrets. I'd bought it with cash, along with a modest boat that I'd named Second Chance. Some people might have called it a midlife crisis, buying a boat at 63, but I called it something I should have done 30 years ago. The phone in my pocket buzzed with a text message. These days, I only gave my number to people who mattered: my lawyer, my financial advisor, a few new friends I'd made at the marina, and Sarah. Sarah was 71, a widow who'd lost her husband 2 years before I met her. She had silver hair that she wore in a neat bob, laugh lines around her blue eyes, and the kind of easy confidence that comes from a lifetime of knowing exactly who you are. She lived in the cottage next to mine, and we'd started talking over the fence one morning when I was struggling to figure out how to work my new coffee maker. You know, she'd said, watching me wrestle with the machine, there's a perfectly good diner just down the street that makes excellent coffee. I'm trying to be self-sufficient, I'd replied. Honey, she'd said with a laugh, self-sufficient doesn't mean you have to do everything the hard way. That was Sarah in a nutshell. Practical, kind, and completely unimpressed by the fact that I had more money than I knew what to do with. She'd been a high school principal before she retired, and she had that no-nonsense way of speaking that cut through pretense like a knife through butter. The text was from her. Wine and sunset on your deck, or mine? I made that spinach salad you like. I smiled and typed back, mine. I'll open a bottle of the good stuff. 20 minutes later, she was settling into the chair next to mine with 2 glasses of wine and a bowl of salad. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a pelican dive for fish in the harbor. Penny for your thoughts, she said eventually. Just thinking about how different this is from 6 months ago. Different how? I'd told Sarah about Bella, about the lottery ticket, about everything that had led me to Charleston, She'd listened without judgment, the way good friends do, and then she'd given me the kind of advice I'd needed to hear. 6 months ago, I was sitting in a house full of memories, waiting for a daughter who didn't really want me to call and pretend she cared. Now I'm sitting next to someone who chose to be here. Sarah smiled. Choice makes all the difference, doesn't it? It does. Any word from Bella lately? I shook my head. She stopped calling about 2 months ago. I think she finally figured out that I meant what I said. You miss her? That was the question I'd been asking myself for months. I miss who I thought she was. I miss the relationship I thought we had. But I don't miss the actual person she turned out to be. That's honest. Took me long enough to get there. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. You can't raise someone else's character, Anthony. You can only model it and hope for the best. That was something she'd told me before, and it had taken me a while to understand what she meant. I'd spent Bella's whole life thinking that if I just sacrificed enough, gave enough, loved enough, she'd become the person I wanted her to be. But people become who they choose to become, regardless of how much their parents invest in them. I've been thinking about doing something with the money, I said, something that would make a difference. Like what? There's a program in town for single fathers, men who are trying to raise kids on their own, the way I raised Bella. They need mentors, financial support, someone who understands what it's like. Sarah nodded. That sounds perfect. I thought I could start a foundation, not something big and flashy, just something quiet that actually helps people. What would you call it? I'd been thinking about that too. The Margaret Morrison Foundation, after my wife. She always said that being a parent wasn't about what you could give your kids, but about what you could teach them. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. I think she would have handled Bella better than I did. Or maybe Bella would have made the same choices regardless. Some people have to learn their own lessons, Anthony. You can't do it for them. We sat quietly for a while longer, watching the harbor traffic thin out as darkness settled over the water. This had become our routine over the past few months. Dinner together a few times a week, long walks on the beach, conversations that didn't require any performance or pretense. Sarah knew about the lottery money, but she'd never asked me for anything. She'd never suggested expensive trips or fancy restaurants. She seemed to understand that what I valued most now was simplicity, authenticity, peace. I have something to tell you, she said as we finished the wine. Oh? My daughter called today. She's getting married in the fall and she wants me to move back to Ohio to be closer to her grandchildren. My heart sank a little. That's wonderful for her and for you. Is it? I've built a life here, Anthony. I have friends, routines, people I care about. She looked at me meaningfully. I told her I'd think about it. What will you decide? That depends partly on whether I have a reason to stay. I set down my wine glass and turned to face her. You do? Do I? Sarah, these past 6 months have been the happiest I've been in years. You've shown me what it feels like to be with someone who actually wants my company, not what I can provide. And I hope you'll stay, not because you have to, but because you want to. She smiled, the kind of smile that starts in the eyes and spreads slowly across the whole face. I was hoping you'd say that. Later that evening, after Sarah had gone back to her cottage, I sat alone on my deck with a cup of coffee and looked out at the harbor lights, reflecting on the water. My phone was silent, which was exactly how I liked it these days. I thought about Bella, probably going about her evening routine in the house she and Derek were somehow managing to keep despite their financial troubles. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever regretted the choices that had led us to this point, but mostly I didn't think about her at all anymore. I'd learned something important in these past months. Love without respect isn't really love at all. It's just obligation dressed up in prettier clothes. Bella had never respected me, and without that foundation, all the love in the world couldn't build a real relationship. The Margaret Morrison Foundation would launch next month. I'd already identified 12 single fathers who could use support, mentorship, and financial assistance. Unlike my relationship with Bella, this would be about giving without expecting anything in return, except the satisfaction of knowing I'd made a difference. Tomorrow, Sarah and I were going to take the boat out to one of the small islands off the coast. We'd pack a lunch, spend the day exploring, and come back tired and happy. It was the kind of simple pleasure that money couldn't buy, but that freedom from toxic relationships made possible. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Bella's number. For a moment, I considered calling her, maybe offering one more chance at reconciliation. But then I thought about Sarah's words. Some people have to learn their own lessons. Instead, I deleted the contact entirely. The lottery ticket had given me $170 million, but walking away from Bella had given me something much more valuable: peace, self-respect, the freedom to choose who I spent my time with and how I lived my life. At 63, I was finally learning what my wife Margaret had tried to teach me all those years ago. You can't control other people's choices, but you can control your own response to them. I chose happiness. I chose dignity. I chose to surround myself with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.